There's a sound you can almost hear if you listen closely to the world right now. It's the sound of factories running 24/7, churning out weapons. It's the sound of brand new fighter jets streaking across the sky. It's the sound of nations spending money on their militaries like we haven't seen in generations. The whole world is arming up, and it's happening at a truly breakneck pace. Take a look at this number, 4.7%. This is what's making military analysts sit up and pay attention. This is the slice of its entire economy that Poland, a key NATO member, is planning to spend on defense next year. Now remember, the official NATO target is 2%. Poland isn't just hitting that target, they're more than doubling it. And trust me, they are not the only ones. So that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why this massive historic rush to build up armies and arsenals? Well, we're going to dig into two completely different answers to that question. One of them comes straight from the world of politics and strategy. The other one, well, it comes from an ancient prophecy. Okay, so first, let's tackle the conventional wisdom. This is the view you're going to hear from generals, from politicians, from the folks who study this stuff for a living. This is the world of threats you can see, of strategic moves and countermoves, and just the cold, hard math of national security. From this point of view, the answer to why is actually pretty simple. It's survival. Countries are looking at what's happening in the world, like Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and they're drawing a pretty logical conclusion. The era of relative peace might be over. So they feel like they've got no other choice but to get ready for a fight. And just look at the scale of these preparations. You've got Poland pushing a massive 4.7%. Estonia, which is right there on the front line, is aiming for 4 to 5%. And then you have Germany, a country that for decades was famous for underspending, now blowing past that 2% NATO goal. This isn't just, tweaking the budget. This is a fundamental rewiring of the entire security mindset of a continent. And let's be clear, this isn't just about hiring more soldiers. We are talking about a massive technological upgrade. Nations are buying the most advanced, most destructive hardware money can buy. Things like HIMARS rocket systems, 5th-gen stealth fighters, even nuclear submarines and new aircraft carriers. This is a 21st century arms race, plain and simple. So, to sum up this first viewpoint, nations are pouring billions into cutting-edge weapons and getting our industries ready for war because they believe a major conflict between countries is a real and growing danger. It's a logical, if frankly terrifying, response to the world we live in. But there is another perspective, one that says these preparations are not at all what they seem. And then you get this, a quote from one of our sources that just completely flips the entire conversation on its head. This isn't a policy paper. It's not a military strategy document. It's a formal warning. And it's not aimed at one country. It's aimed at the entire world. And this leads us to our second and, honestly, far more unusual explanation. This view says the real battlefield isn't in Eastern Europe or the South China Sea. It's in a spiritual realm, one that's governed by some very ancient and very specific laws. According to this source, which calls itself an open decree to the nations, this global military buildup isn't a smart reaction to world events. It claims the whole thing is actually a carefully orchestrated trap designed to lure the world's armies into a conflict that is not their own. At the heart of this idea is something the decree calls the law of consent. Now, stick with me here. The idea is that there are these hostile, non-human entities that are essentially trapped, bound to a specific region, the Middle East. And according to the spiritual law, they can't break out on their own. They need our permission. They need our consent. And how do we give that consent? By engaging them in military conflict. To fight them is to give them the legal right to escape their prison. So, based on that law, the decree's message is incredibly blunt. It's warning all the nations of the world, stay out of the conflicts in the Middle East. It doesn't matter what the political reasons are or even the humanitarian ones. It argues that using our modern weapons against these enemies doesn't defeat them. It actually empowers them. It's like pouring gasoline on a fire. We become the key that unlocks their cage. And this is maybe the most shocking part. The decree says that this enemy doesn't want land or oil or resources. It's not a nation trying to expand its borders. Its goal is something far more chilling, what it calls the dissolution of the human spirit. So you have to be asking, right, where on earth does a claim this extraordinary come from? Well, the decree itself points to one specific, ancient source for its authority, the book of Revelation from the Bible. And here's the verse, Revelation chapter 16, verse 14. It talks about spirits of devils who go out to the kings of the earth, which you can think of as today's world leaders and military commanders, and their whole purpose is to gather them all together for a final massive battle. So if you're looking at the world through this lens, the huge military buildup we see, that 4.7% in Poland, the new aircraft carriers, all of it, it's not just a series of rational human decisions, it's seen as the direct fulfillment of this prophecy. The spirits are succeeding. They are gathering the world's armies just like the ancient texts said they would. So here's where we stand. We have one set of events happening all over the globe, a world arming for war, and we have two completely, radically different ways to understand what's going on. On one hand, you've got the geopolitical view. The driving forces are nations, like Russia and China, and the goal is security, plain and simple. On the other hand, you have the prophetic view. Here, the driving forces are these infernal entities. The threat isn't physical, it's spiritual. And the goal isn't to win a war for territory, but to trick humanity into breaching a spiritual quarantine. And that really leaves us with one final, unavoidable question. As we watch the nations of the world spend trillions of dollars on the machinery of death and destruction, we just have to ask, what forces are truly being gathered here? Is this all just a rational response to earthly threats? Or, as one ancient book and one modern decree both warn, is it the final move in a much older and much, much larger game? A game where the prize isn't just a piece of land, but maybe the human spirit itself.